Greenheart Connects. I'm Marcel and I'm your host. We're so glad that you're here today. Greenheart Connects is a monthly online series to exchange ideas for improving how we care for the earth and each other. Through facilitated discussions and curated presentations, people from around the world share their experiences, stories, tips, suggestions, and resources to make the world a better place. Their stories are inspiring and motivating. Together, we have the power to change lives, improve local communities, and protect our environment. Greenheart Connects is brought to you by Greenheart International, a not for profit organization facilitating global understanding through cultural exchange programs for Americans and young people around the world. Each month, Greenheart Connects dives into one of four themes: environmentalism, volunteerism, fair trade, and personal growth. Today, we're talking with Jerónimo Cooklin about fair trade and the Amazon rainforest. Jerónimo's organization, PaTs, makes the large, deep wooden bowls that are so popular at our Greenheart shop. These bowls are carved from a single piece of wood in the Peruvian Amazon by Yanesha artisans. The 20 to 24-inch wide bowls are rare. Only a few are made each year. They are unique and they are so beautiful. And with fair trade organizations and producers, it's about so much more than the products. You see, Geronimo works with the indigenous Yanisha people to make sure that they are paid, not just fair, but paid so that they too can prosper. Rather than export wood from the rainforest at commodity prices, the Peruvian artisans add value to the wood before it leaves the forest. That means more income to the Yanisha. It also means that the trees are managed sustainably and valued as long-term investments by the Yanesha. The people benefit from dignified and prosperous work. Fair trade can be a complicated concept. We think it's helpful to discuss what makes fair trade fair and to learn about how we can support it through the stores that we shop at, the products that we purchase, and the choices that we all make. After Geronimo's presentation, we will meet back here for a live Q&A. So, are you ready? Let's go.
Hey, hello. My name is Jerónimo Cooklin, born in Peru, but then I've traveled the world quite a bit. I'm an engineer. Um, I'm an artist. I like wood. I'm an innovator with wood, and a creator of supply chains, really fair trade supply chains that give good work to the Amazon people so that they can make good money and then they can conserve their environment and they can make the Amazon sustainable for us all. How I started doing this line of work has been a really wild story. Because I'm a chemical engineer, then I got an MBA and I started my business in the furniture business. And when I was already making a lot of furniture, I asked myself a question: where does my wood come from? This is way back. And back on September 97, when I was living in Los Angeles, I was in one of my solo camping trips with my dog up in the Sierras. And one of those days I'm going up this trail and I just hear this big voice saying, hey, your wood comes from the Amazon and you're in a unique position to conserve the Amazon through your work in the furniture industry. That's exactly how I heard it. And then I said, what? Who said that? And the only thing was this huge juniper there. And it's a longer story because then it goes to something else. But anyway, that moment just made me think, what? That was September 97. In mid 98, I asked my board of directors, hey, I want to do a giving back program. And so 10% of our profits started going to what I call the giving back program to research how could we know that we were manufacturing, making money, but also not destroying the rainforest. And then I took this job really, really seriously. The more and more I understood the work. Once we started exploring the Amazon and what's going on there, that they're just taking the wood, paying them nothing to the inhabitants. Then, the inhabitants turn the forest into agricultural land or pasture land, and the trees to them are worth nothing. So yeah, how did I get into this? It was that tree, that moment. It was discovering that indeed we can totally work things differently in the Amazon for the greater good. The Amazon is this one ecosystem that is precious, and we really got to take care of it. Peru has three very distinct ecosystems: a super arid coast, the Andes, where the Amazon River is born, and the Amazon. The Amazon represents more than 60% of our territory. I was born in Lima in the desert. I never knew the Amazon until after I got this calling that's where I was to work. Most people in Peru don't go to the Amazon because it's not nice. I mean, the Amazon is tough. So we wanted to be sustainable. So when we began our work back in 2000, we went to Palcaso and we started there because the first managed forests by indigenous communities were there in the Palcasu. Palcasu is where the Andes come right into the Amazon. Well, that's where the Amazon is born, because what happens is all the clouds of the Caribbean full of moisture get brought to the trade winds and boom, hit the Andes, and that's where the rainforest begins, right? And right at the foothills of the Amazon of central Peru, that's where Palcasu is. It's, to me, still the most beautiful and stunning and gorgeous place that I have seen Amazon-wise. There in the Palcasu we're so close to the headwaters. That is just paradise. So the first time I went in there, I was just like, wow, yeah, this is the Amazon. And it has its things, the insects and the snakes and the this and the that. And it's not easy, man. I mean, I've been working there for years, and it's the job to go there. But it's gorgeous. It's vibrant. It's alive. Everything, the energy is it's super energy. There in the Palcasu Valley is the Yanesha ethnic group, as in the States, you call them the First Nations. One of the First Nations were the Yanesha. They've been living there ancestrally for thousands of years. Let's just think of it like this. You have a forest that's a big forest, a 1,000,000-acre forest. And a community has a little 40 hectares forest that's being managed. What does manage mean? It's understanding what the species are and how can you actually harvest it sustainably. It's basically permaculture. It's organic farming, basically. You take out the resources at the rate that it can auto-regenerate, paying attention to, the biodiversity. And it's a whole thing called forest engineering. What happened is now, okay, we had these two managed forests that were being productive. They were giving an income. Now you take it to 2010 when the access to this big 1 million acres done, because before, when we got there, it was like, that was adventure. I actually loved it because I love four-wheel driving, and it was like a real challenging drive, 36 hours to get to it. And so people didn't go there. The loggers didn't care because it's too hard. And then when it was rainy, they would get stuck. It gets declared biosphere reserve by UNESCO. Oh, great. So, okay, so now a highway comes. Now all the loggers can get there not in 36 hours, but in 12 now. Oh, now it's worth it. And if there's a highway already made, which we had, into two of the forests, they're going to use it. But they don't care about the environment. So the roadway is the one that gets completely, that's what was destroyed. It's been a crazy ride this last 20 years to see how all the Amazon gets degraded. I've been to Brazil, I've been to many parts of the Amazon, and this is what happens everywhere, because why? Because the Northern Hemisphere basically wants the wood from the South and not the employment. So they just take the wood, they pay them nothing. And we are basically, that trade has basically been teaching people in the South that their wood is worth only this much, and it's worth for it to be taken out as wood, as raw material. And so here I am going to give you the statistics of what's happening in the Peruvian Amazon, which is crazy. We have 3,000 species of woods in the Amazon. Only 30 of those woods have a commercial value. It's what the Northern Hemisphere wants. The Europeans, the States, Asia, now China is buying everything. And what do they want our wood for? Mostly right now is for hardwood floorings for fancy construction all over the world. So all the hardwoods that are being exported out of Peru, which are only like 15 species, basically goes to China. So all our medium density wood, which is only another 15 species out of 1,000, go to Mexico. So it offers job to the Mexican people under the border, so that the American market can have, fine furniture, because all those species go into the fine furniture. So that's what's happening with the wood from the Amazon. Out of 3,000 species, 15 are used for hardwood floors, going all to China. 15 are going to Mexico for the furniture manufacturers, and the other 2,900 and something are being burnt by indigenous peoples, because they're told, no, that wood is worth nothing. The reality of the Amazon. Very poor people, somebody comes, hey man, here's some cash for your trees, and burn it down, and it happens all the time. So 21 years later in the Palcazú, all things have changed a lot. There has been a lot of degradation. And then when that happens, all these NGOs come and create other living. Forestry is hot, like, cacao, which is a good thing, and then achote, and all these different crops. But like that, we are changing the whole ecosystem, the whole balance of it. So Palcazú has been extremely degraded in the 21 years that I've been there. The Yanisha people have lost their identity mostly. The new generations don't really care about what the old generations found of value, because now everybody wants money, and you don't find money in the Amazon. So they all migrate. And what happens is that for forest management, you have to have continuity. So these villagers that bought into the concept, yeah, we have to manage our forests, let's not destroy them, back in the late 1900s, and we came in 2000, okay, let's partner up, it worked great, but all of a sudden we can't give them more work, they're poor, they got to do something, so they move on, they stop the forest management, or in one case, one guy just sold all his wood. So yeah, it's disgusting. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, every time we would go in at like in the 2014, I would see like so many trucks taking out the logs, and it was like, oh my God, we felt like we had lost the game back then. But because the trees were going, the people, we couldn't give them more employment. So it was many years of just continuing the work and keeping a small core of people that really believed in it, we could give employment to. But now we're increasing our production and going to be able to give employment to a lot more people. And these people now really believe in us. But yeah, so when a consumer wants to feel safe that, hey, they're buying something, and is this a good thing or a bad thing for the environment? Okay, but what is the environment? The environment is really the greater good, because we only have one environment, right? So we all want to do something that is right now for the greater good, because we are one. So Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, if we're degrading the Southern Hemisphere, it's also going to affect the environment. Again, the environment is, the health of the greater good, of sapiens, of all the biodiversity in it, of the waters. Sustainability is about what your raw material is made out of. Has it been managed? Is it a renewable? But for me, most important is that product really bringing well-being to the people where it's being manufactured. Because if the people have a benefit to being environmentalists, which in this case is what we promote, is like, because then they understand, hey, the value of each tree, I'm not going to burn it to make a crop that then nobody pays me anything for. So for me, the key aspect is giving the people employment. And that's where the term fair to me, again, because fair is in the eye of the beholder. It's all relative to the point of the observer. And, this concept, we need to be fair with the South. We need to be prosperous in the North, and we need to be fair in the South. To me, it's no, hey, this shouldn't be fair trade. This should be prosperous fair. But it's really giving them a trade that they know that they can make good money, not fair, good. They deserve to be as prosperous as anybody. Why shouldn't they? Right? Through 20 years of research and development and understanding really how a model like this can work, provides a much, much better livelihood to alternative forms of income and development that they have. Nowadays, how local inhabitants embrace that is through whatever practice they see that brings them cash, basically. And that is mostly harvesting of agricultural crops like cacao, like coffee, like achote, which usually means they have to migrate. The other thing is to convert the forest into agricultural lands or cattle ranching lands, which is what many of them do. So that's what's happening right now in the Amazon. And on average, these employments make them 45 soles a day. But the thing is that they're seasonal. It's employment that is only when the harvesting comes, or so it's like, out of 12 months, they probably work 3 months out of the year. And for which they have to go elsewhere because in their local communities, pretty much there's no work. So our model brings this whole other, thinking. Number one, okay, people make 45 on average. Okay, so we target for them to make 60 if they're an average person. But if they're good craftsmen and efficient, they can make up to 200 a day. Yeah, like 4 times more than the average. What's super interesting, though, is that with what we do, with carving it all in sight, it's our technology, and this is what we call our technology, and when I call it in situ Amazon transformation technology, ISAT. If you work the wood there in the Amazon and you remove the bulk of the wood there, then out of those 3,000 species, now with this technology, with ISAT, it's like, hey, we can use just about any species, but it has to be done in the Amazon first. In the tropical forest in the South, it is very typical that in a hectare of 100 trees, not typical, but it could happen, that each one of them is a different species. And so you don't clear cut. So forest management in the South, in the hemisphere, is about hand picking the trees. And so you do 20 to 30 year cycle harvesting models. They're called operating annual plans. And you just hand pick the ones that are old. But if you're doing proper forest management, you need to understand all sorts of things, like the density of that species within the whole forest. You keep the older trees that are going to be the ones that are going to provide the seeds for the new trees of that species. Then you need to look at the bird. There's all these other layers of scientific understanding of how to manage a forest, and it's really sophisticated. And the Forest Stewardship Council most certainly is the most, it's the highest standard of how to go about doing that. But it's very different. So what does it mean to be sustainable? Basically, it's a managed forest that you are understanding all these aspects of this ecosystem, so that when you harvest what you are going to use, what sapiens, I say sapient, what humans want to take out of that ecosystem for their use, that it doesn't disturb the higher balance of species, of of birds, of insects. I mean, it gets very sophisticated. It's different, very different in the Amazon tropical southern hemisphere forest than in the northern boreal forest. They very different behavior, very different climates. So the northern forest, you effectively do clear cut things, and then you need to replant everything. In the forest that we are working, and in many of these situations we will be working with in the Amazon, we will probably only harvest 2 trees or 3 per hectare. A hectare is about 2.3 acres. It's 100 meters by 100 meters, where you could have a population of 80 trees, and of those 80 we will cut sometimes one, sometimes two, three, maybe at the most four, if the forest management situation allows that to happen. Now, but this is the deal. In the Amazon, you don't necessarily have to replant, because what happens, you still keep the whole canopy, right? And all you have done is done 2 holes in the canopy. So in 2.3 acres, you're just going to have the whole of the heads of 2 trees. Everything else is still covered. So that ecosystem is still pretty much intact. And if you've brought the trees down, observing, how you should bring them so you don't disturb the habitat around it, what are you going to have? You're going to have 2 big beams of sunlight coming in. And where that sunlight comes in, there's going to be not only one, there's going to be 10 trees that are going to grow right there by natural regeneration. You don't need to touch it. It will regenerate by itself. Many saplings, young trees will grow because they will grab that sunlight, and they have plenty of water, which they have the situation. Let's talk a little bit about the products that we've been selling to Sobremesa by Greenheart, which has been a pretty constant product line, which is doing deep bowls. It's everything about carving deep into one solid piece of wood. That is the basis of ISET, of our in situ Amazon transformation technology. So far, people concentrate in taking out just boards, straight boards. And if they want to take straight boards, then they cannot use woods that have very different densities and behaviors between what's called the heartwood, which is the center of the wood of the tree, and the sapwood around it. So a lot of things then cannot apply for wood boards, because if it goes between sap and hard, then that's where the boards start warping or cracking. Because we went in thinking, okay, how can we give the most employment in the Amazon? We thought, hey, why don't we do these bowls? Because what we do is we harvest them completely different. So the bowl is 7 inches deep, which is what most people cannot do, because they're thinking maximum 3 inches, because they're thinking boards. But if we go to 7 inches, what we do is we grab the whole chunk of a tree, which is actually if the diameter of the tree is like this at the base, we do a triangle, and we cut 3 pieces like this, and we and that piece of wood right there, basically with an adze, which is the oldest woodworking tool that you've ever seen. So when you go to museums like in Canada and you see how the canoes were made, it's like an axe that instead of having the knife the blade like this, it goes like this. And with that, but what's important about our technology is that where the wood falls, where the tree falls, right there, we harvest the tree. Like the old First Nations in the United States would do. Hey, the buffalo would fall, and boom, right there, they would use that buffalo for all their needs, and they wouldn't leave anything, right? It's like, if I'm going to kill this buffalo, I'm going to use absolutely everything I can from it. The same happens with a tree. So we these chunks, and then the artisans right there when the wood is still wet, because when you cut the wood, the cellular content of water of that mass of wood is about 90%. And with high water, it lubricates the tool. So we go with a big solid piece of wood, and then we take out all that wood while it's still green. It's called green wood when it's still wet. And once we've given it the shape, and we're using a curved dome shape, which is really the most strong structure and lightest structure for a volumetric capacity. So by giving it that shape, it has an inherent structural strength to it. If we remove the wood in the interior, which is what we do when it's wet, the difference between the behaviors of the sap and the hardwood can no longer crack it. And then we've learned through these many years of working, and that's where my engineering and research and development comes, is like, through 20 years we've been understanding the drawing curves of these woods, and that's the most important. The drawing protocols. Yeah, those bowls, those Greenheart bowls we'll be doing are actually quite a beautiful piece of engineering, and they're bringing a lot of good prosperity to the people that are working it in the Amazon. So we started with the 17-inch deep salad bowl, and it continues to be our bestseller. And now the 20-inch. And what's unique about our product, it's the fact that it's just one piece of wood. The product is not only beautiful because it also shows a hand carving, which is very unique, which you don't see much nowadays. But it's unique because the wood is different, and the dimensions we achieve are pretty unique for our categories. In the Amazon right now, the logging practices is horrible. I mean, like a tree goes down, and the loggers only use what they call the filet mignon, or la crema in Spanish, which is not even 40% of the biomass. And everything there is left to rot, even though there's an argument for carbon sequestration, which is good about that. But so my dream is, hey, if we have enough variety of products, which is what we've been working with the buyers of Greenheart over the many years, is how do we introduce a product mix that offers us that capacity to do it like a puzzle, where you utilize everything right, and therefore you waste the least possible of that individual tree that you sacrifice in order to. But in this case, you're sacrificing to give employment to 30 people for a month, instead for just like 2 loggers to make a bunch of money and pay a few indigenous people money to carry the wood. And for a full utilization of the tree, we need to have a much more diversified portfolio of products, which is what we're developing with Greenheart, and we're introducing a bunch of new products soon. Trees are worth everything. Don't burn them, for God's sake, to plant pasture to get cows, because the Amazon soil is actually not fertile, so their cows are all skinny. So anyway, but I'm so passionate about what I do, and it's the job I have this lifetime, and I'm doing it.
We are live today with Jerónimo, who is joining us from Peru. Hi, Jerónimo, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Tell us, where exactly in Peru are you in right now?
I'm in Lima, the capital, the metropolitan area, where I nowadays try to spend as least time as possible.
Well, sounds good. I'm very excited that you're here to join us after watching the presentation. I have a lot of questions already, but before we get to the live Q&A segment of today's presentation, I also want to say hi to everyone and thank you for joining us. If you have not already, please utilize the comment section below and write your name, where you're joining us from or where you're from. And if you have any particular question about the Amazon, about the wood, about Yanesha, about the bowls, or about Jerónimo himself, definitely put them in the comment section below, and I will be going through them during the Q&A section so that we can ask the man himself live. So before we get to all of those questions, or as we're waiting for the questions from people, I do have a question that is, to me, this is so fascinating. Jerónimo, can you tell us about the Amazon? You mentioned in the presentation the southern tropical forests are different than those in the northern regions. So obviously you've been there many times, and maybe most of us will never get to go. So I was hoping that you could describe it to us. Put us on one of your trips into the woods. Tell us what you see, what you smell, what you hear, what you feel, so that we can better understand it, we can appreciate it, and we can do what we can to help preserve it.
Great. Okay, well, what you hear are birds, lots of birds, and you see lots of butterflies. But this is when you get into, I mean, away from the villages, where I say where white man's culture has come in already. And I say that specifically because it's, you know, as in the conquest of the Americas 500 years ago, that they were kind of forced to implement other forms of living. And there, it's like any poor village anywhere in the world, you know. But then you go into the forest, and that's where you see the butterflies and the birds, and you know, when it's rainy, it gets all very muddy. The water gets muddy, and it's not that dissimilar to other tropical South Hemisphere forests. I mean, I've been in Indonesia. I've been now to Brazil, but Brazil is Amazon. I still don't know Africa, but you know, it's similar. And what's the experience is, it's similar to, you know, you go up to Vermont, and that's a wild forest, but it's a boreal forest, and boreal, it's a different species. Then one loses the leaves, the other one doesn't. So that's why, you know, the forest in the Amazon is always green, while there, you know, everything loses. So it's a different ecosystem altogether, and they're very homogeneous. So, you know, you have a spruce forest, or you have an alder forest. While here, it's just, you know, it's virgin in a lot of it. You know, the secondary forests, they're all being clear cut, and now there's some reforestation that are homogeneous species, but you know, most of it is cattle ranching, and you see these anyway. So very different ecosystems, different ways of harvesting them, much more difficult to understand. The thing is also, boreal forests, there's a lot of civilization. There's all the original forests are basically gone. But the boreal forests in acreage are growing. So northern hemisphere forests are growing because they've been replanted or whatever. But you know, they've been wiped out, and now they're like regrowing. So it's very different. Here's like the new territory, right? The southern hemisphere, and so it's virgin, but we're coming and implant this really bad program on people. Hey, your trees are not worth anything. Make yourself a cattle rancher, have skinny cows, and not go anywhere, be poor. Or, you know, be an agriculture, but you know, you can just sell your raw material to these intermediaries that make the money, and then you're still poor, you know. And this is no, hey, you don't take raw material. You have to give employment, you know, with those raw materials. And wood, I'm very knowledgeable about, and I know what's happening. So yeah, that's kind of, without going on, because I can go on. So
Well, yeah, there's two things that I wanted to follow up on there. The first one is, you mentioned about wood. There are 3,003 species there, medium density woods, there's cycle, etc. Do you study trees to know which species would work best for, different products?
Yeah, actually, they're called dendrological studies. And even though I'm a chemical engineer, I've been having this vision and this passion in the Amazon for 22 years, and I've been doing a lot of, well, I've hired a lot of forest engineers, and with that, I've become one myself. I mean, not with a diploma, but knowing a lot about it, and also in the practical, actually in the ground. So, and the dendrological study involves things like, importantly, the physical mechanical characteristics of the actual wood. But for us, very important is the contraction expansion ratio of how much, because wood is like a sponge. It's like a total sponge, and it never dies, right? It's because it's organic matter. And what happens is that when it gets water, it gets like this. And then when it loses water, it goes, right? And that we want to measure because, and then there's that heterogeneity of the graining, and some of it's curly, and because the wood market wants boards because that's what they can put in containers and send it easily. They're only looking for that really straight graining. You don't want too much heterogeneity because then the board will warp or crack, or so people have to be thinking boards because it's, hey, we get from the south raw material, we bring it to the industrialized northern hemisphere to provide labor, right? And then we determine what's fair for those people to live, because it's fair that I may live more abundantly than my brothers in the south. And that doesn't work. It's not sustainable for humanity because there's just one forest, one ecosystem. I mean, there's lots of forests, but the Amazon in particular, other than climate thing, it's the biodiversity there of stuff that we never heard about. Hey, who's heard about the Harpy Eagle? And write it down. But the Harpy Eagle is the biggest, most powerful eagle in the world. I tell you, when you see a photo of it, you go, what? It's like the phoenix bird. Has like this 3-meter wingspan. When and I said, what? When I first saw it, it was only 10 years ago. So I'm sure that, I mean, at the most, 3% of the audience has heard about it because we don't know anything about it. Hey, it's the Amazon. All we know is mosquitoes and snakes, and don't go there. Unless you go on a tour high end on a boat, which is the kind of tours that come in, or, pay a lot of money for an expedition, or backpackers too. But it's still unexplored, and nobody wants to hear about it. The Incas, their empire never went into the Amazon either, because, hey man, it's just like crocodiles and stuff back then, and now there's just all sorts of other things. But anyway, lots of malaria in places now because the climate change is making it all difficult for everybody. So yeah.
Have you ever been bitten by one of these wild things as you were in the Amazon?
Say that again.
Have you ever been bitten by one of these wild animals as you were in the Amazon for one of your trips?
No, not personally a wild one, but yes, bees. And I am extremely allergic to bees, and I did not have my EpiPen, and I nearly died actually. They got me out to a posta medica, it's like a little infirmary, and they shot me, and because my thing was already, but um, but a couple of my team members have been bitten by snakes, by gergonas and shushupes. I mean, these are like the biggest, and the shushup is the bushmaster, known as bushmaster. The gergona, they swim, and they're nasty, and they will kill people for sure. But then there's antidotes, and when we take people, because I've done eco tours along the way, we take the antidotes with us, but it's still a whole process because you have to IV them. It's so when we go to the park, that's but you know, if you go in the cities, you don't, because hey, if there was a snake, they would have eaten it, because protein is protein. No, they'll kill all. I mean, that's what Sapiens has done right from the beginning. There's protein. I mean, you know, Sapiens started in Africa, and then they went to Australia. I mean, I hear Australia had like these mammoths and these huge lions. It was protein, so they ate them, and they can go like a pack like. But the Amazon, nobody's been there. That's why it's wild, and it's why it's so important. Biodiversity wise, for sure.
Right.
Climate change wise, for sure. The climate change, because everybody knows about the North Atlantic belt and how it's kind of freeze the south, the Europe. But what turns out is that there's also, I mean, it's a long story, but there's also a south. The reason why the south rotates in that direction and kind of balances out the North Atlantic belt is because the Amazon breathes, and it creates like this ocean in the air of water. And that is what balances the inertia, because the ice age will come when the inertia, I mean, it gets out of whack, and then the South Pole and the North Pole go, oops, this is no longer the North Pole, boom, it does this. And then we all go into an ice age. So the Amazon serves, it's called the hydric cycle that creates that river through water in the air, that the North Atlantic belt does it through the Atlantic Ocean, bringing it up north and bringing it down and bringing those kilojoules of heat up north, right? And that balances the whole, us spinning in this axis. But then if it's set, so that's another long story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, the part in your presentation when you talked about watching logs get carried out and feeling like you had lost the battle or the game, that's not easy to watch. That really hurts, you know. And I think it's been estimated that the Amazon does lose the equivalent of 27 soccer fields full of trees every minute. And that's a lot. And you know, that's something that we don't really know or pay attention to, but I think it's great that we're talking about this. So what can each of us do to help prevent deforestation and this horrible loss of biodiversity that you were just talking about?
It got me a little emotional. That thing. Yeah, I saw it. Man. It came down. Yeah, consumers are just not paying attention to the right stuff. You know, that thing about, I heard somebody really excited one day about, oh man, I can get a shoe that's made in Milan and just like the leather brought from Africa, and you know, and then shipped to my apartment in San Francisco in 2 days with Prime. Hey man, it's like we are paying so much attention to what we humans, you know, my whole thing started in sustainability with Ishmael, this gorilla, this gorilla that talks to this. Humans are takers. It's all take, I take, and they don't give back. And it's true. We think that we are like the kings of this universe, and that's gonna last for all empires went down because of that, of ecosystem abuse, all of them, Egypt included, right? I mean, it's not like that. Then, like the floods and the ice ages come just because what we humans do, we accelerate or decelerate our rate of change. And wood, for example, for me has been a big master, and I'm a chemical engineer. That's what we you know, analyzes. We want to take certain thing from point A to point B in a way that it allows the system to take it without cracking. And wood is a perfect example. If you dry it from humidity deep in the Amazon to civilization, to these metropolitan areas where people live in little apartments are totally disconnected from nature, it'll crack because it's gone from system conditions 1 to 2 too quickly. And that's what humanity is doing to our own selves. We are taking the oceans and the waters and polluting like there's no tomorrow. And I say we're idiots, but it's about being more conscious and doing things. And it starts with being much more compassionate with your brothers of the South. They're not about just harvesting the raw materials, because then it's one big system that just breaks down. And climatologically will too. I mean, IPCC talked about it 20 years ago when I go into this, and I'm a scientist, so I got into it, and that model, that's what it says. The poles are going to shift, and then boom, we go into ice age. Yeah, before we're going to extreme heats and colds, and these hasn't been cold. I guess some of you people out there experiencing lots of heat, huh?
Right.
It's not coincidental. Was predicted. It's scientific. It's not yet.
With a lot of extreme changes in weather and nature because of our action. And you are right, we are not kings. We do need to have compassion because we want to make sure that the earth will still be there and we are not doing our part to continue to the downfall of it, like a couple of the um, examples that you mentioned. And so one of the things that is connected to the work that you're doing is that the tree and how much of it is perceived as no value. I'm going to read this question from one of our viewers. This is Laura from Spain. First of all, she said, thank you for the important work that you're doing to help preserve the Amazon and the sustainable livelihoods of the indigenous people who live there. I was shocked to learn that more than 2,900 tree species in the rainforest are being burned because they have no perceived value. What percentage of this useless species is PaTs able to use for its gorgeous wood bowls and other kitchen products? Are all of them useful or some more so than others?
Good, that's a great question. Okay. Yes, yeah, that's a whole other subject and and also terrible statistic of yes, 3,000 or more species. And in the market, they're categorized under comercial o corriente. Comercial means, yeah, this has a commercial value. Corriente means anything else. So yeah, we have 30 comerciales and 2,970 corrientes. What does comercial mean? Because the wood value is now being given by the exporters of wood boards. That's what they want, right? And for it to be a wood board, it has to have certain type of grading. Before I got into this, I started my whole career in wood as a furniture manufacturer. And we actually, my company back then, researched 4 of the wood species that before were considered corrientes. And then because we researched them as boards, and we were a big exporter of furniture, those are actually the species that are going up to Mexico. And but before they were, the thing is, nobody's bothered because the Amazon is like the Wild West, hey man, there's no law, there's no anything. So who goes there? The loggers. Who goes there? The coca growers, because that's the habitat where coca leaves grows. And then the narcos that buy the coke and convert it to cocaine. So those are, because that's the Wild West. So the lungs of this precious world right now are in the hands of the drugs and people being confused that their land should be burned and converted into cattle ranches. Because we've implanted that thing, right? So now, are those 2,970 burned? No. but 2,900 are. The other 70 are corrientes that people use. I was just on a trip right now researching some new, they're called LKS, lesser known species. If you go into conservation, that's like the big gig because if out of 3,000 trees, only, one of them, 3,030, that's 0.1%. So, out of 3,000 trees is, so 1,000 trees, let's say one is worth something. And so, hey, yeah, everything is worth nothing. Okay, let's torch it down. Let's bring the cows. If all of a sudden, you make it 2 and 3 and 4, and you don't get to like a half, because not even 1,000 trees, a third, all of a sudden, hey man, they're not going to want to burn it. It's be crazy, right? Especially if you've given them the education of how to convert that raw material to finished good. Our model is crazy. I saw a presentation. It's like, you just talk about, our average labor that we pay, that's, can be 4 times, 5 times full what they will make. But also we pay really well for the wood. And then there's the transport people and everybody. So it made like one tree, right now, a logger goes and pays him 100 soles for a standing tree, 100 soles. I'm not going into the math, but we have an explanation. But we turn to 20,000 soles, 200 times more of benefit in the Amazon, because no longer, the wood before went, a tree, then a couple of people to carry it, put it in my truck and go. But they don't have trucks, right? It's like the people with the money that come with the trucks, that they're the only customer right now. So back to Spain. Gracias, Amia, por la buena pregunta, because what's happening is that, a lot of the rest is being burned like crazy. And then, corriente wood is also used for local construction, so it's not that it gets burned. So that's what I'm saying, probably 2,000 of those trees do get considered like nothing. And I know that in our industry, for home furnishings, tabletop objects, and we, as I say, I was just in this trip that we researched 3 LKS new that we haven't used. They're beautiful. They're going to work. So I cannot tell you that I'll find 100. I don't know if my marketplace or my angle of this gig will take me to consume 100 or develop. But if other industries joining in understanding, researching, paying attention to, hey man, what can we do to add value? So because now, the presentation talks about PaTs. That was our nonprofit for 17 years of our work. Now we are Mama PaTs, which is Mother Earth, because PaTs means earth in Yamasha, and Mama is mother, and it's mother in Quechua in the Andes, and PaTs is in Yamasha, because the Amazon River, that's where it's born, where it hits the cloud. So Mama PaTs. But a previous thought of it, I've been thinking about this for years now, 24 years, was that I was going to call it Amazonia 1300. Amazonia 1300. That was our concept. Because what? Because in the same way we're doing this with wood that now I understand and you hear about, the same thing is happening with all the superfood raw materials. Where does cacao, coca, cocoa, coconut, coca, is consumed as coca leaves, as cocaine, but coca is a super food. It has the highest content of magnesium. It gives you the most calmness. Then when you turn to drug, then you go boom. Cacao, the whole North Hemisphere is knowing that's a super food. Well, because the thing is that Amazon is such a powerful ecosystem that it generates super biosystems. Right? And the North is just taken. So all the cacao here goes to where? It goes as pits at the the lowest chain of value added, goes to Switzerland, and Lindt and company makes great chocolate, but we could make it here. But the way that it's whole being set up, it's that way, right? So we just have to pay attention to adding value here. We've done it in wood. With that, we have our brand Mama PaTs making kind of like the gateway of, hey, we can do this in the Amazon. We don't need to just take the raw material. We can use those raw materials, give employment, and with that can serve the most precious ecosystem we have.
Well, there's definitely a lot more that we need to do collectively. This is not a one person, one party, one country solution, but everyone needs to work together because it is supply and demand, and it is about, people understanding where their items come from. In this case, the wooden bowls, for example, which I was looking at the comment section during our conversation, and there's already a couple of people commenting about the bowl. They either want the bowl or they want to know more about how to care for the wooden products. So we'll be sure to follow up with you on those.
Can I say one quick comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the one thing I wrote is because, it really is about supply and demand. Right now, it's about consumers. Consumers really demanding the right products. And the thing is, consumerism is not a good program to have for the greater good either. But if that becomes the motor of demanding conscious products that are like our products that brings well-being to everybody, then there is a way. So what I'm saying is, what you buy is the most powerful tool of change. Your vote of what you buy, because if we go to politics, it gets confusing. It's half-half. The world is divided. Peru's going through its election, same thing as the state, 50-50, and they're like, no, there's the fraud. Okay, sorry, but it's about the bowls. So yeah, talk about the bowls, sorry.
No, absolutely. I don't think we have enough time to cover the bowls or other things. I have a few other questions about some of the other items that you're working on, but I think we are out of time, unfortunately. I do encourage everyone who have specific questions about the bowls or how to care for them, if you could email us at our email address, and we'll see it during the other segment after this, but do send us an email and we'd love to connect with you to provide more information about any of the products. But Jerónimo, I think you closed our Q&A segment with the perfect message, which is, it is up to us as the consumer to affect change. We do have the power to make change, and it's all about making sure that we understand and then really following through and committing to it. And on that note, we're super happy and thrilled and humbled that you're able to spend time with us today to talk about these things so that we all can learn about the Amazon and fair trade and what we all can do. So I thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this connection of this message to the world, because it's an unknown place and we got to get to know it because it's our place.
Absolutely. And for everyone else, stay tuned for a little bit more information about our global community, about the bowls and what's coming up on Greenheart Connects. Thank you. believes in the power of fair trade to connect people and planet. If you're interested in supporting fair trade and the people of the Amazon by purchasing any of the Pets Wood products, please be sure to visit greenheartshop.org. The deep bowls are extraordinary, rare, and super popular. Greenheart Shop will have more wood items, including those giant bowls, back in stock in October. And you can get 10% off pet wood products by entering the code GreenheartConnects10 when you check out. Do you have an idea to share with us about fair trade or taking care of our environment or of each other or any personal growth ideas? If you do, please email us with your idea at connects@greenheart.org. We would love to hear from you and potentially feature you on an upcoming Greenheart Connects episode or highlight you on our social media channels. There's so much that I've learned today. Many thanks to Jerónimo Cooklin for joining us. And thanks to all of you who participated and asked questions. Join us on August 19th at 11 a.m. Central Time when we talk with Precious Mensah from Ghana about her summer work travel experiences and her personal journey with her Liquid Love Foundation. We think you'll be inspired. You are here because you want to learn about ways to care for our planet and for each other. And for that, thank you. We hope that you'll share Greenheart Connects episodes with your friends and that the exchange of ideas will open new perspectives all around. Greenheart Connects has a new episode every month and it is free for anyone who creates a login. Remember that all past episodes are available at greenheartconnects.org. Later today, this full episode will be available online. Be sure to check out the resources page for more information shared by our speakers. And finally, please join us on our social media channels to continue the conversation and to share what you are doing to make the world a better place. We hope to see you here again on August 19th for the next Greenheart Connects. Thank you. Bye-bye.